Hi. In the previous lesson, we looked at the cases of congruency. We said two triangles will be congruent if it's side, side, side. Two triangles will be congruent if the side included angle in the side. They'll be congruent if it's angle, an included side, and an angle. They'll be congruent if it's angle, angle, and a side. They'll also be congruent if it is RHS. Now let's look at how we can use this in triangles. But first, if I had these two triangles as congruent, say angle R is equal to angle Z, angle T is equal to angle X, and angle S is equal to angle Y. It does not make those two triangles congruent. But for them to be congruent, must satisfy the cases we mentioned. But if these other sides are also equal, then the two triangles will be congruent. But you don't need all of those to make them congruent. Only 3 pairs you will need for congruency. Now, once the two triangles are congruent, then the corresponding angles will be equal, and the corresponding sides will be equal. One thing important is the symbol for congruent triangle. The 3 lines is for congruency. Thus, we can say the triangle on this side is congruent to a triangle on this side. Another thing which is important is the order of letters. Here I said angle R was equal to angle Z, as you can see in the diagram. Angle S equals Y, and angle T equals to angle X. Therefore, triangle RST will be congruent to triangle ZYX. So see, I start with RST, ZYX. Equal things, they follow each other. Similarly with the sides. If we look at the sides here, RS are first 2 letters of the triangle, and ZY are first 2 letters of the triangle. If we are to look at the congruent triangle, you'll find that RS and ZY are equal. RS, which is this one, ZY, which is this one, are equal. Ticked ones, ticked ones. Even the outside letters, the RT and ZX, those will be the sides which are equal. RT, there is RT, ZX, ZX, they are equal. It is important that you know how to label congruent triangles. Now let's look at an example. Here's the first example. They say here, in triangle ABC, angle B is equal to C and AD is perpendicular to BC. That is the given statement. Always read the statement, and that statement may help you to fill in the information that is not put in. You can add it. They said angle B is equal to angle C. Angle B is equal to angle C. So you can show with a symbol that those angles are equal. So I've shown with the same symbols. The next one, AD is perpendicular to BC. The line AD is perpendicular to line BC. AD is perpendicular to BC. Perpendicular sign means that I've got an angle of 90 degrees there and an angle of 90 degrees there, which makes those two angles again equal. So when we look at this, that's what we have now. Let's look at the question. The question says, prove that triangle ABD is congruent to triangle ACD. And we said to prove that the two triangles are congruent, they must satisfy any one of these conditions. So in this case, the two triangles that we are referring to, ABD and ACD, there is an angle equals to an angle, there is another angle equals to an angle, there is a common side. It will make these two triangles congruent because we'll have 2 angles and the side will have something like this, 2 angles and a side. So when we start, we will say we are dealing with 2 triangles here, small triangles. So we'll start by saying in triangle ABD and triangle ACD. Now note, when I start, I don't say the two triangles are congruent. I say and. The reason is because I've got to prove that they are congruent. So I cannot just say they are congruent. I have to follow some steps before I can conclude they are congruent. So to prove that they are congruent, we mentioned that there must be three pairs of things that will be equal. So the first pair would be here, the second one here, the third one, and then my conclusion. First thing, angle B equals angle C. Angle B is equal to angle C. What's the reason? That was given. They gave us. That was given. Next one. We said D1 is equal to D2. Angle D1 is equal to angle D2. What's the reason? It was also given. Or they just said AD is perpendicular to BC. So we can say AD is perpendicular to BC. The next one. We said there was AD, which is a common side between the two triangles. There's AD on this triangle, there's AD on this triangle. So AD equals AD, that is a common side. Therefore, now I've got three pairs of equal things. I can say, therefore, I can conclude the triangle ABD, this triangle ABD, is congruent to this triangle ACD. Triangle ACD. And the reason for congruency, it was an angle, and a side. It's angle, side. The next part, which is B. The question says, why is AB equal to AC? Why is this side equal to that side? Note, if you look at AB are the first two letters of the congruent triangles, and AC are the first two letters of the congruent triangles. Therefore, those two sides would be equal. We can say AB is equal to AC because we've proven that triangle ABD is congruent to triangle ACD. Let's look at another example. Next example says, PS and QT bisect each other at R. PS and QT, they bisect at R. We've got to prove that PQ is parallel to TS. First, what is given? We fill it in. They said PS and QT bisect each other at R. What does that mean? Say bisect each other. So this and that they bisect. It means that this is equal to this. That length over there is equal to that length over there. And that length is equal to that length over there. So that equals that. I can mark it equally like that. Now, the question is, how can we prove that PQ is parallel to TS? How can this line be parallel to this line? We know that lines will be parallel if alternating angles were equal. So we've got to prove that that angle is equal to that angle. So we can use congruency between the two triangles to prove that these angles are equal, which will then imply that this line is parallel to that line. So how do we write that? Again, using congruency. In triangle PQR and triangle STR. First, I'm not saying they are congruent, I must prove first. So 1, 2, 3. I must find three things which are equal. First one, the QR is equal to RT. Reason, that was given. Next one, angle R1 is equal to angle R2. Why? Those are vertical opposite angles. The third one, PR is equal to RS. That was given. It therefore means that the two triangles, this triangle is congruent to this triangle. Therefore, triangle PQR is congruent to triangle. So PQR is triangle to triangle. The angle that I must start with must be an angle which is equal to angle P, that is S. Then I go S, T, R. And the reason for congruence is the side. It's an included angle because we said those angles are equal. And the side. So it's side, included angle, and the side. Now the two triangles are congruent. Now let's check whether this angle is equal to that angle. We can see here angle Q is in between the two, and angle RT is also between the two. So we can write and say angle Q is equal to angle T, because the two triangles are congruent, because triangle PQR is congruent to triangle STR. Now since Q is equal to T, that angle Q is equal to T, and those are alternating angles, it makes these lines parallel. So since this is equal to that, it implies that this line here PQ is parallel to that line TS, because the alternating angles are equal. Now, can you try these problems on your own? From a textbook, page 159, exercise 4, A to G. You've got to scan and upload your work onto Glass Notebook under homework. The due date for this work will be tomorrow evening at 9 p.m.